we are just operating through traumatic lenses. So if my work can raise the vibration and meaning that we actually lean into our own individual traumas and actually be open enough to start healing it, for me, man, I'd leave this earth just feeling like, okay, I contributed. And so that is my mission, 110%.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. In this show, I will introduce you to ideas, concepts, and mindsets that will open your mind to a new world of well-being and personal life growth. Through eye-opening interviews, we elevate people in the world doing amazing things for humanity and share insights that will shift you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate version of you. For all of you listening, I'm sure you have gone through some form of change or challenge over the past 12 months, and many of us have been disconnected from people for a significant amount of time. For those of you who are in Melbourne, Australia, for the bulk of 2020, like I was, you would have experienced 8 months of lockdowns and are probably craving human connection more so than ever. So I wanted to tell you about a beautiful live urban day retreat Conscious Conversations is running on Saturday, the 13th of March, 2021. It will be a day to reconnect, share, listen, be inspired, and allow space for yourself all over a course of a day. You will experience breathwork sessions, sound bath healing, deep conversations with inspiring individuals, food, drinks, and a community of incredible people. If you'd like to go along and it sounds like your thing, you can use the promo code LIVE21 for my specially priced tickets. The website to go to is consciousconversations.live. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Things You Can't Unhear. I hope everyone is doing well and enjoying the start of 2021. We're already in March. Time absolutely flies. So I hope you're making the most of each and every day. Now, I just love everything about today's conversation with Yemi Penn, who shares her experiences and tools on how to deal with childhood trauma and unlearning the structure in order to heal. She guides people to look at their trauma in the face, go through their healing, and then contribute to helping others do the same. She's passionate about being real about her emotions and genuinely making a difference in helping others transmute their pain to power. Whether you've been through or someone you know has been through trauma, childhood trauma, or intergenerational and ancestral trauma, this is an important listen and helps us to understand the spiritual aspect to healing and viewing life as a lesson. I hope you enjoy listening to Yemi as much as I did. Welcome, Yemi. I am absolutely beyond thrilled to have you here with me today on Things You Can't Unhear. I've been really intrigued with the work that you've been doing, and I strongly believe that you're spreading a powerful message to the world and really allowing people to regain their power through everything that you do. So welcome and thank you for being here.
No, listen, the pleasure's all mine. I want to thank you and honor you, because every time I'm given the space to use my voice to talk about things, not only do I learn more about me, but I start to craft the message I want to say more eloquently. So I don't take this lightly. So thank you very much. I'm excited to see what we uncover.
Me too. I've been thinking about you all morning. So it's beautiful that you're here. Now, I'll start this discussion with this question. What would you say your main mission is right now through the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so this has become really clear to me. It's to raise the vibration on healing our trauma. You know, that sounds like really nice, fancy words, but depending on how deep we go, it really, I truly believe it is a big catalyst to almost every other problem we see in the world. We are just operating through traumatic lenses. So if my work can raise the vibration and meaning that we actually lean into our own individual traumas and actually be open enough to start healing it, for me, man, I'd leave this earth just feeling like, okay, I contributed. And so that is my mission, 110%.
You're definitely contributing to that. And You know what? I think all of us in some way have endured some type of trauma in our lives. Obviously, there's significant trauma and then there's less significant trauma, but there is in each of us an element of trauma that we have dealt with or are still going through. And you talk about this a lot through your work, but I do want to start by really unlocking and sharing who you were as a child, who 5-year-old Yemi was, what your upbringing was like, because I strongly believe that all of our experiences shape who we are, and whether that's in a positive way or a negative way, our perception of everything that's happened to us in life comes from our experiences. So what was 5-year-old Yemi
Yeah.
like, and what was life like for you growing up?
I love interviews where I have no idea where the questions are going to come from,
It's
but that
fun, right?
question has stumped me because I'm still trying to actually weave the braids of my young life. So I sat down. I've got two children, and I'll come back to it very quickly. My daughter's soon going to turn 14, and I went to sit with her on her bed yesterday, trying to explain to her parts of her childhood that still have left me traumatized, because I'm pretty confident she was traumatized. But I was actually just explaining my culture. And I say that because I had something very similar. I was born in the UK. My mom was a very, very smart Nigerian woman, which is that every time she was pregnant, she would get on a plane from Nigeria and give birth to us in the UK, because she always wanted us to have that flexibility of choice of where we wanted to live, either Africa or the UK and around. However, we were also raised by a village. So I'm not sure who I was living with when I was 5 years old, because when I ask my mum, she tends to close off. Or maybe I've just created it in my mind. I actually get nervous about asking her, because I don't know what she carries around that story. But it was known, it was a village. I was raised by foster parents. There was something called farming back in the day, where a lot of African parents would have their children raised by Caucasian people somewhere in the UK for a number of reasons. So I stayed there for a little while. I've been told I was there between 4 to 8, but then my grandmother thinks I was with her. So it's quite disjointed. And I think that's part of the work I'm doing now. Do I think it was traumatic? I don't have any memory of that, but the body keeps the score. And I know I'm using the word trauma a lot here. That, just to be clear, for me, that's either a distressing or disturbing event. But 5-year-old Yemi doesn't really have an identity. So I tend to do a lot of inner child work. And still got a lot more to do.
That is fascinating. I wasn't expecting that answer, Yemi. I'm here in Fiji at the moment, and a lot of people here are raised in a similar way. They're raised in villages without their parents. They're probably raised by aunts, uncles, grandparents, anyone who's in that village who can look after them while their parents are out working and earning money and sending it back. So I suppose that's sort of like a similar upbringing to you. And I was talking to someone who I met who's from a village but has moved to work here, and she has a 3-year-old who is back at home, and she was telling me that she really wanted to get him out because she didn't want him to be raised in the same ways that she was raised in. And she sees the way that people from Western countries come here and discipline their children, and she's in awe of it, because she said, the way that children are disciplined back in the village is pretty brutal. So I can see that correlation with what you're saying, and it's quite fascinating. And obviously, you not even remembering it or having that timeline to it can bring on some type of trauma and something that perhaps you haven't unlocked yet.
Yeah, I mean, I thank you for raising that. And that's why I think I was stumped by the question, because not many people ask that, but it's actually quite vital to who we are. And if you had asked me that 4 years ago, I would have lied. I would have made something up 100%, because it sounds scattered as hell. But now I'm in the stage of, no, let's use our voice, let's figure it out. But I think there's trying to find the balance between indigenous cultures and the Western culture. I really think it's the best of both worlds. And that's why I'll always advocate for diversity where we can, in the truest sense, because I don't think it's one rule fits all. Like, I love the idea of a village raising a kid. But I'm beginning to now learn the whole attachment styles you form are so important to the life you lead. Can we do that in a village style mentality? I don't know, but definitely something I'll be exploring later on this year.
I want to know how you got into this line of work and how you help people unlock their potential and transmute their trauma to their power. How did it all start?
Oh, it's a good one. It probably all started by me completely screwing up what I call the memo. And the memo is that, you get married, 2 kids, white picket fence, job, retire, all of that good stuff. I evidently didn't get it. And I relocated to Australia when I honestly felt, and this was about 7 years ago, when I just thought, okay, you've really messed up here now, Yemi. You just need to go somewhere where no one knows you and just try to make the most of life. But it seemed like it followed me. And this came from a relationship that didn't work out. And so I started looking, because the minute most of us are triggered by either a traumatic incident to go through some form of awakening, or we're just really intrigued. I think for me, I've chosen a life that says I just go through distressing events because that's how I learn. And so I started doing personal development, and then more spiritual, not necessarily religious, just understanding and hearing my higher voice. And that was when, what was it? It came, that was when I had to start opening up that the reason why my movement started, because I moved in Japan prior, and I recently released a short documentary where I explain it. I was just moving on paper. It was like I was running away from something. And it turned out that I was completely avoiding the fact that my traumatic incident that happened to me as a young child was at the hands of a family member. And it turned out he was still traumatizing little kids, of which one was the same age as my daughter. You can't run away from the psyche in that. For me as a kid, I buried my memory, but I was nearly 30 when I found out he was still doing stuff. And the brain, the soul, my spirit was just not going to let it be, but I didn't know how to release it. What do? I wanted people to hear me now when they didn't. And so I just wrote my book. And I really struggled with it because it felt like I was writing about everything and nothing. But I wanted the chapter on trauma, childhood trauma, to just be the intro to stuff. But then that was what most people latched onto. When I did my launch, I was meant to, have a mini world tour this last year, but obviously couldn't. But I noticed that in the 2 book launches I did, the chapter 2 on childhood trauma was the one people were leaning into. And I think that was when I realized, okay, there's a need for this, but it's really, really uncomfortable. Do you really need? I really, like, this would be some family members' worst nightmare for me to be doing this. And so there has been a lot of hesitancy. And more as I've gone into my spiritual growth, the signs have just been there. Like the documentary I put together in the middle of COVID, considering I have no background in filming, just came together within the space of 3.5 months. There's a force way bigger than me in it, and now I'm just full blown in it. So yeah, I'm on the mission. I've accepted it. Yeah, I've accepted it.
I want to talk about this documentary in a moment, but there's real strength in sharing your story, isn't there? There's a real power in
Absolutely.
what comes from sharing your story. And my God, it must feel so uncomfortable when you do it for the first time and painful. But coming out the other end, how does that feel?
It feels good. I'll be honest with you. I've probably repeated my story now possibly 20, 30 times. So it doesn't feel a lot. But every time there's a different niggle. But the secret is I know how to soothe myself now. And that's part of some of the first things I want to do. I know how to soothe myself. I know how to hold the space for me. And if I happen to be with a beautiful soul like yourself, I know that there's also someone holding the space for both of us. But as a minimum, I know how to ground myself and hold it. So I can't say it completely disappears, but it does get easier. And you also have to be able to, it depends on how people respond. I've got social media pages, and when someone sees my work in documentary, some of the responses I get from someone in Africa is completely different to the person I get in Italy. And so it's all culture. And I just have to know how to soothe myself and not be rattled by a response that maybe isn't what I'm used to hearing. But it gets easier, but it's ongoing.
I've interviewed many people who have undergone significant trauma in their lives. And one of them, I remember saying, she shared her story that maybe the first 15 times and she broke down on stage every single time. And she said, you have to find a way to not let it get to you when you're speaking. And obviously,
Yeah.
you know, she has done that, and she's become incredible at sharing her mission and her story and everything that has happened to her in her past. But obviously there's powerful tools that you and she and others have learned to unteach yourself the things that have happened to you or that you believe about yourself after going through trauma.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Unlearn. We need to hear that more. I mean, we needn't actually teach anybody anything anymore. I think the minute you're over 8, we should start unlearning. Simple.
What did you have to unlearn about yourself?
I had to unlearn that keeping quiet was for the greater good for yourself and others. I still have to unlearn it. And I still want to find out, you know, because part of my work, especially as a transformation coach, is I don't know everything. You can only know everything if you are the all-seeing, if you are the universe, God, Allah, Buddha, whoever, whatever you believe in. And so I want to remain open to the possibility that I don't know, is there benefit in keeping quiet about anything? Because like that lady said, one of my biggest fears was letting things out and not being able to get myself back in. I remember going to my first therapy session and telling the lady, look, we're just going to do this in 5-6 sessions because I ain't got time for this. I've got 2 kids to feed. I ain't trying to leave here crying every day. And I told her that straight. So one of the things I'm having to unlearn is that silence is the best remedy. That I know for sure. Maybe it's got a place somewhere, I don't know. Other things I've had to unlearn is that there's definitely no one memo for motherhood. That hands down is the hardest gig ever. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out who I am, and then I get gifted 2 kids to do the same. Like, it's either a cruel joke or there's no memo and I can just go as I plan. So I'm unlearning the structure. Yeah.
Oh, there is no rule book at all, and as they change and grow, so do the rules, and so do the experiences. So yeah, I'm there with you. I totally understand. Now, I want to talk.
Told me that.
No one tells us, right? So I want to talk about your documentary. It's very powerful. I watched it recently, and it's very raw. It's very vulnerable. It's very honest, and you share a lot about your experiences. And you titled it, "Did I Choose My Trauma?" And this 20-minute documentary follows the experience of your childhood, abuse, and into adulthood. How did the documentary come about? And also, how did you choose that title?
Oh, I love your questions. I love it. Questions. The quality of your questions determines on the quality of your life. Tony Robbins said that, and I just love it. So thank you. So like I said, I wrote my first book, Did You Get the Memo? And in there, I spoke about my trauma. But I started to realize, actually, I didn't want it to just be about me, because everyone was saying, oh yeah, I know someone who this happened to. I know someone I know. And then because I don't like too much attention on myself anyway, yes, there is a part of me that wants to be seen, because inner child Yemi, wasn't seen for that incident. So there's a part of me that still wants in significance to know that I'm here and I can be loved and all of that. But there was also something else, the fact that I realized that what I went through isn't the only thing. And the more I'd speak to people, I'd hear, and I gave this in my TEDx talk of a young man who had shared an incident that was 100% traumatic, so much so that it had affected his marriage. And this was him losing his goldfish as a kid. But it was really weird. I found myself mourning for his pain, mourning for something I had never given myself. And so there was something in that I wanted to work with other people, but I was working with my business manager, and she said, you know what, Yemi, I think it would be really good if you did a documentary on trauma and you travel to different parts of the world. And everything in me shut down. I was like, no, the world does not want to hear this anymore. The Me Too movement came out, got a lot of backlash. I just think people want to move on. So this was all my inner dialogue. And then May 13th, the day before my birthday, this same business manager, love her to bits, she gifted me a reading. Once again, that's another thing I've had to unlearn. I grew up in a Christian background, even though we had rituals in Africa. I lived in Nigeria. There was this notion that if you did anything such as reading or whatever, that it was against it. So it's quite interesting. I need to bring that back in another documentary somewhere, but I had a reading and I felt it, she felt it, that I needed to do something. And it was clear, it was a download. It was do a documentary. And so I Googled, how do you do a documentary? And part of my transformation work is teaching people that you can do whatever you put your mind to, because the minute I did that, and I just went onto Facebook, because I didn't know, do I look for a producer, director, what's a DP? Literally Google, great thing. And I guess I had it in my mind. I knew that I wanted experts on there. So it was like a vision. I'm a very visual person. And honestly, that's how it happened. I knew it needed to be self-funded because I needed a proof of concept to do the next one, to go to Netflix. And as for the title, I spoke to the producer, Alina, and she said, Yemi, you see, the thing with documentaries, for people to be interested, they want you to be answering a really powerful question. She hadn't even finished, and I said, yeah, I've got it. It was another download, a download in the sense that it just plopped into my head and I was at peace with it. You know, it's a question, like I just said, the quality of your questions determine the quality of your life. For me, did I choose my trauma? Quite interesting. It's not a blame one, but I appreciate for some people who are still in the early stages, it might be. And I make it clear that's not my intention, but I also make it clear that maybe I am not the one to serve that audience. And however, if they feel called to, then they should. You know, I think the audience I'm trying to serve are those who are now ready to look at their trauma in the face, go through the healing, and then contribute back, because we need more people. So the question was like, on a different, not this physical plane, on a different plane, whatever you believe in, did I ask for an experience that would allow me to find my power? Not did I ask to be abused by my uncle, but did I want the experience that would allow me to come back and use my voice and give? But in order to hear that, you will need to work past the title. Most people have done that worldwide. You know, we've had to think of coming up to about 100,000 views across all the platforms. And it's a tricky one. Sorry, that was a lot of talking there, but it's a tricky one.
A couple of things have come to mind from hearing you speak. I mean, obviously you had the reason, you had the why behind this documentary, and nothing else mattered because you can learn the rest. And that's what makes it so powerful. You really wanted to share the story, not make a documentary. And I love that because it's so evident in that documentary why you're sharing it and why you're bothering to put this all together and go out there and finance it yourself and you know, do all of these things to share this story even further. And I absolutely thought it was incredibly shifting to watch. The title did get me because I noticed you asked several people and experts in this documentary, did I choose my trauma? And even seeing them hear that question, it stopped them in their tracks for a moment. Did you find that it triggered a few people, and especially in their journey of creating the documentary?
Oh, look, absolutely. I'll tell you now, and when I go back in hindsight and look at that, I would do it again. However, the feature length that hopefully, that we will start filming in the next couple of months, it will have a change in it, because that was my story, and I want to own my journey, but I will never put that on other people. So with some of the subject matter experts, they not that they weren't comfortable, they could answer it quite clearly. Well, no one would, or I can't see why anyone would. But that's from their perspective. I haven't had that many, but I did get one view where a lady was very strong about it. And I completely understand where she's coming. If I didn't come up with that, I would wonder, why would you ask such a silly question? But in my own development, I'm actually intrigued when someone asks a question that appears silly. What do you mean? But she didn't. And she was an absolute advocate for, when you do this, you will be giving people the impression to take self-blame and giving the perpetrator a reason to get away with things. And that by far is not what the intention is. And most people that watched it found out eventually. With that, I've had to be delicate and say, no, that is definitely not my intention. I do implore you to continue to watch. And I said, however, I would love to work with you, because maybe we could be the opposite sides to, you know, what this is. For me, it's about self-empowerment. Am I going to reach everybody, Maritza? I'm not. That saddens me, but I'm not. But I don't carry the ego that suggests I am to serve everybody. You know, the part of me is that I can work with someone who who doesn't like my approach, but respects me enough to maybe work with me so that they can give another approach so that the people I don't reach can be reached. So that's the aim. I welcome people. Every time I put out the video, I usually say, please be compassionate, please be kind to me when you respond, because that's ultimately what I'm trying to do, is to be a compassionate advocate. I haven't put it in there, but let's be real. If you look at the stats on sexual abuse, we completely miss the fact that those stats almost mirror the perpetrator. And society is so focused on condemning the perpetrator that we've completely missed the question of, well, why the hell is the perpetrator doing this? Like, I get that we're not trying to go and solve them. We need to, my focus is the person who's gone through it. But I don't want the perpetrator to keep doing that. Do we need to get them out of society? Do we need to put them wherever? Absolutely. But let's not also forget it. We just seem to be in this Hollywood version of you're the goodie, you're the baddie. No one's looking at the cause. So there's a lot more, but a title will never do it justice.
When you were asked, Yemi, did you choose your trauma? Can you tell everyone how you responded to that question?
Oh, I think I did exactly that. Took a deep breath, looked left to right. And I'll say it now, my answer stays the same. On this physical plane, absolutely not. I did not choose my trauma, especially as a 7-year-old girl. And even if I was a 70-year-old woman, I would never ask for anyone to exert their power over me so that I lose mine. There is a huge and growing part of me that says, on a spiritual plane, on a soul level plane, planes that I'm still trying to investigate, that I may have chosen the experience that would have me understand how to take power back, how to work with, marginalized or, underrepresented groups who constantly have their power taken away. I believe I chose that experience. Did I know I was signing up for that type of trauma? No way. I think if we had the memory, we would all be out of this joint called Earth in a hot minute. And that's a convoluted response, but for simplicity, physical plane, absolutely not. Spiritual plane, definitely the experience.
That might not make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but that makes complete crystal clear sense to me. A lot of the books that I'm reading and a lot of the people that I'm listening to and learning from say a very similar thing about, the human experience and why we're actually here and what we choose before we even enter this earth, as Maritza and Yemi and whoever is listening out there. We choose what we want to learn in this lifetime, and then we spend the rest of the time trying to learn or reteach ourselves these lessons. So, I mean, yes, I completely understand and resonate with what you just said. And, there's so much more to it. Elizabeth April, who I had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, is raving about past life regression and the messages that we can get from that and the teachings that we can get from that. And I feel as though there is something so powerful about seeing the experiences that we've had and the journeys and the stories that we've had in previous lifetimes and what they're trying to teach us. And she says, if you're not getting that lesson in the first lifetime, you're going to continuously get it in the next one and the next one and the next one.
Yes. Oh my gosh, all the goosebumps. Yes. And thank you for saying that. I've been teetering. I'm not quite sure exactly where your listeners and audiences are. And I'm still learning this. And this is why I want to do the documentary. I want to take people on the journey. But as people have been saying, something's going on in the world and things are moving really quickly. And so we need to start having these conversations. And this is what I talk about, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I think there's a lot of truth in it.
Absolutely. Now you also talk about intergenerational trauma. How does that differ with personal trauma?
Oh, so I have this thing in some of the courses I do where I call it pain to power mapping, which is that most of our pain points have eventually turned out to be quite powerful if we were to ever go back, if we are still here today to tell our story. And the first painful experience is that of all of us who are within our mother's womb. So I don't have the drawing, but if you can just imagine, you've got a woman who's pregnant, And within her, she's got her baby. Her baby already has all the eggs apparently she's going to have. So whether it's her whole reproductive system is actually already in her. So if me as the woman is pregnant with this child in here, especially a woman who's then got her own reproductive system, whatever distressing event or happy event I go through, it goes through the body. I mean, I already know for a fact that when I'm stressed or worried about something, my shoulder, my right shoulder is in agony, it's in pain. It's weak, yes, from a few, disjointed parts of my back, but my body speaks to me because the body keeps the score of what's going on. So intergenerational can be purely biological, but intergenerational can also be that because my mom, me doing the same with my daughter went to live with my grandmother for a year. It felt natural and normal for me to do that. It really did, because I became a single parent. I didn't know what else to do. And my mom suggested, well, why don't you send her to grandmom's? But literally yesterday, once again, the downloads were coming and said, she was 2.5 years old. Dad had already left. And then so even though she didn't have the vocabulary, just imagine the trauma that would have gone through her body when mum wasn't there the day after. Even though I'd had conversations with her, it was happening, a 2.5-year-old is not going to hear that. And so intergenerational can be that you've carried on a belief system and a practice and a culture from one generation to the other, completely ignoring the fact that the world is changing. And there's so many. And then you could take it to a spiritual plane. I literally just had a past life regression through crystal dreaming, which is what I do on Sunday. And that was phenomenal. I was experiencing an actual past life. Have I carried it into this one? Once again, all up for debate and discussion.
What were you? Who were you in a past life? I would love to know if you're willing to share.
I wondered if you were gonna. I've actually now had about three past life, but this one was pretty visceral in the sense that so crystal dreaming, you use crystals to kind of open up your awareness. But in this particular past life, I was what I think I always knew. I was a slave. And the feeling was me being with the shackles around my legs, just being dragged and pulled, and I was under this altered state, but I was crying because I was so sad. I was so sad that humanity had gotten to the point that they would inflict that on. But the whole point of crystal dreaming is to go through the process, yes, of the pain, but it's ultimately to get to forgiveness. And it's tough, I don't want to come here like a kumbaya type teacher, healer. I want to be real about our emotions. And for me, and there was a lot of torture in that, but ultimately I got to a place of bliss and forgiveness. And in doing that, a few miraculous things happened for me. And I've had a few others where I think I was a young boy, but a lot of it, once again, in the indigenous culture. So I'm confident that I've probably got quite a long lineage from that.
Having learned what you've learned over the last 15 years, 13 years, doing what you're doing and unteaching yourself all of these lessons, I'm intrigued to see what your next life will be.
Oh my God. I think I'm tired, Maritza. Can I just have
you want to rest?
It's no more.
You've learned it now. You've learned. You've taken the lessons. So there may be more freedom in that next lifetime. This is what I truly believe.
Yeah. Oh, please.
No.
That would be awesome.
Beautiful. So you are an absolute powerhouse these days. You run numerous businesses. They're all around the globe, Sydney, London, online, God knows where else. You have written books, life-changing books. You've created documentaries, even when you didn't know how to create documentaries. You have spoken on stage at TEDx. How have you done this all, and how do you keep yourself sane? Because you haven't been on this path for that long, have you?
No. So like I said, I must have signed some sort of experiential thing, because I think life has been preparing me. If you're 7 years old, you've got 7 years experience in whatever field you're in. So for me, life was my lesson, and it just all felt, and I think my guides or whatever you believe in were just waiting for me to stop resisting and just accept. How have I done it? I've done it by listening. I don't believe for a second, very little knowledge is new knowledge, meaning it's already out there. I remember relocating to Australia 7 years ago and someone being really panicked And I'm like, our parents couldn't speak English, you know, they didn't have the degrees we have, they were on boats. And I'm talking every culture here. What do I have to worry about? So I think most of us are forgetting that there are people who've been here before us. And so I've literally relied on like real true life stories. If there's ever anything I want to do, it's to find out. And I've just started, and I read, I consume. Me and Audible, we are listening in the car. You know, I've got to find the balance because I don't think I know how to relax or have fun, because reading for me is fun.
And you are all about maximizing your time. I've read on your website, people often wonder how I've managed to run 4 businesses and parent. The short answer is I practice being in the now. When I do that, I'm able to effectively squeeze 40 hours out of my 24-hour day. Tell us more. Tell us more about this. I think we all need this in our lives.
Oh, so there are, let me see. There are 3 things that I truly believe do that. So I've just released a webinar where I talk about a few other things. So the first thing is I truly believe meditation. I'm one of the most busy, well, I have a very busy mind. What transcendental meditation has done for me in particular, that my partner introduced me to, is instill in my mind for 20 minutes twice a day, if I can try. What happens is, even though my brain is busy for 17 of those minutes, those 2-3 minutes get my brain in a capacity that's almost me asleep but awake. The clarity that gives me almost gives me an extra 4 hours. Like I'm not kidding, I'm not making it up. The engineer in me has kind of looked at my productivity from that. So meditation is one. The other thing I do is I segment my day. I mean, do you ever have, okay, so you and I have been having this conversation, and without a shadow of a doubt, I mean, you'd be superhuman if you haven't. I've thought about something else outside of this conversation while we've been talking. I've either thought about, I should have closed Leah's door, or I wonder whether Steve, my partner, was able to find a car parking space. So I've done that. But what I now do is I segment. So if I know I've got so much going on, you know, Abraham Hicks, who I follow and love, and I think I'm wearing a t-shirt of her thing now. What I try not to do it because not being too anal, but if I say, okay, the first 3 hours I'm going to do stuff on the cafe, or I'm going to do stuff on the gym, which I don't have to do much on anymore, or on the business. I segment my day into what I'm going to do. And I tell myself there is no point worrying about the other stuff because it's already got its segment. I'm going to leave my worry to that. Worry is one of the most wasted times ever. And it takes time, it takes practice. So I segment and I stay in it. The other thing I do is focus. I just focus on that in the moment, overthink. So typically, if I was in a meeting, I would typically be trying to multitask by trying to type things. I now work a lot more by focusing. And because I'm a fidgeter, I have my little crystal that I just hold to keep me grounded. So that I can stay focused. So for me, it's meditation, segment your day, and then focus.
Such simple and easy steps. And I'm just thinking, you were right. My mind went everywhere then, because I've got this ridiculous to-do list, and there's 2 meaty tasks that I know I need 100% focus on. And I could probably smash them out in 3 hours if I did them, but I need them with no interruption, and I need to be in a particular mindset. And I'm literally dancing around those tasks, and it's causing me anxiety and stress and tension, when if I just got them out of the way, then I could move on to the smaller tasks.
Oh, look, I'm still, you know, I'm not even going to be judgmental about it because I'm the same. But just if I put it bluntly, the time you spent being anxious, that whole activity that could take you 3 hours is probably eating up the best part of 2 days. So we just need to find the time that you're just going to close off the 3 hours.
You're definitely a fascinating person. I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I feel like we could continue to talk forever about different things, which is amazing, because you're not just a one-dimensional conversation storyteller. There's so many elements to you that are fascinating, and we can potentially have you on the show 3 different times talking about 3 different things, which would be great. But what would you say is really lighting you up right now and exciting you about the future ahead? I know we've all had a very turbulent year of change with what's gone on around the world, but moving forward and looking forward for the next 12 months, what is lighting you up?
I think what's lighting me up is that I have a feeling, I don't have any proof, but I have a feeling that a lot of humanity has been stopped long enough, and so they're leaning into maybe a different narrative. It's not all. So I'm really excited about that, and in that I'm excited about change. I think once I start filming the feature-length documentary this year, I'm going to be in bliss, because these conversations we had, I'm going to really learn, what do people in Vietnam, what do the monks think about healing? What does the West? I want to know more about medication. I want to know more about our generation. Like I've never been so hungry for knowledge, and then to share it. So that excites me, and the hope that I'm learning something else as well. You know, I know everyone says, you know, I always get upset when people like Oprah Winfrey say, yeah, money isn't everything, and you know, it's not what keeps you happy. And I'm like, let me get the money first, and then I'll tell you whether it keeps me happy or not. But I'm beginning to learn now that it genuinely it isn't. I want to make sure I get to a position where I have my needs, but I can also feel fulfilled. So the biggest thing this year is to kind of start planning and building. Want to build retreats, and make this a necessity in life, and then franchise it. So that excites me. That really excites me.
Yemi, sign me up for your retreat. I am their number one person. Now, my final question to you, if you had the entire world listening to you and you had one message to share, what would you say?
That thing you've been thinking about doing, saying, it's calling you. I promise it's checking in on you. And on the premise, it's coming from a compassionate, not like an angry based or fear based. That thing you've been wanting to do or say, it's calling you. And I am almost begging you to do it, because when you do it, you're living your truth, and you make my life easier, Maritza's life easier, the second person. So not only are you serving you, you're serving others. That would be my biggest thing. Please listen to what you're hearing and what you need to do.
I've shared that in a few of my podcasts recently, that my biggest word for this year is awareness. And I want to be open and listening to any messages that the universe is trying to share with me. And I think that's a powerful, powerful message that you have just shared with the world. So thank you so much, Yemi, for your time today. I look forward to seeing more of what you share into the world, and your messages, and how you continue to change people's lives. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you for listening to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and if something profound came up for you that you want to share, let's talk about it. You can find me on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear, or on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. And if someone you know will benefit from something that was said in this show, make sure you share it with them too. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and keep up to date with what's next. And if you can spare a few seconds, please rate and review the show on iTunes, just so other people can find us more easily and quickly. And as always, my friend, be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.